Hello, and welcome to Archive Dive. I'm Maria Lockwood, a reporter with the Superior Telegram. Each month, we dip into files on historic events, people, and places in Superior and Douglas County with local historians. Today, we'll meet three famous photographers with ties to Superior. David Francis Berry was a noted photographer of the American West who specialized in Native American portraits. He also captured the people and places of the Twin Ports with his lens after opening a photography business in Superior. Ray Jones rose to glamorous heights and won several Academy Awards as the head of Universal Studios' still photography department during the golden age of Hollywood. And Esther Bubley was a freelance photographer who found her niche as a photojournalist, balancing corporate clients with magazine work. Her intimate photos of everyday people graced publications such as Life and the Ladies' Home Journal. Helping us dive into the story today is local historian Teddy Moronic. Hi, Teddy.
Hi, Maria.
Thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
So I want to go backwards in time. We're going to start with the most recent photographer and go back to the oldest with these ties to Superior. And Esther probably has one of the best ties to Superior of these three.
She does. Her family moved to Superior in 1931. She had been born in Phillips, Wisconsin, and she was 10 years old. So she was educated here. She went to Central High School and she went to what it was called at that time. I think it was the Teachers College. The name of the university changes so many times during those years. But yeah, she spent a good portion of her life in Superior.
And she was a library patron too, wasn't she?
She was a library patron. That's what drew me to Esther, I think, in the first place. She went to Central High School, as I said, and she took art classes. She's very interested in art, and I've seen some of her paintings, and she kind of reminds me in a way of Pablo Picasso.
Really?
But she certainly had an eye, but she was told by her art teacher that she had no talent and maybe she should look to some other venue as a career rather than have a career in art. And instead of being defeated by that, and this is what I love about her, she decided she was going to find a way to make a living doing art. And what she did was she went to the Superior Public Library, and there was a new publication called Life magazine. Mm-hmm. People probably remember that. And it was a photojournalist's magazine. You know, it was mostly compiled with pictures that people had taken. And they were telling their stories through these photographs. Mm-hmm. And Esther fell in love with that. And she thought, I could do that. And in fact, she and her brother, it must have been the first sign that Esther was destined to be a photographer. She and her younger brother, Stanley, built a darkroom in their basement when they were kids, and they would take pictures of neighborhood children and then sell them to their parents. Whoa. They would develop them in the darkroom. Really? And so this was during the Depression, and they made a little extra money doing that. So after Esther researched photographers at the Superior Public Library, she was still at Central High School, and she became the youngest yearbook editor at Central. She was, I don't even know if she was 16 yet. She did graduate early. I think she was 16 or 17 when she graduated from Central. Wow. But she was very innovative. And instead of using always posed pictures, she used candid shots in the yearbook, which was cutting edge in those days. Her brother also worked on the yearbook with her. He was the literary section he was in charge of the literary section. And one day she locked him in a closet at home because she wanted him to finish his assignment, and he was dragging his feet doing it. So she locked him in a closet at home and said, I'm not letting you out until you finish it. She's a stern taskmaster.
Definitely.
So she went to college here and worked on the school yearbook. And when I looked at the picture again, when I looked at this time, I noticed that there was a Telegram reporter who also went to school there at the same time, John Ward. He was a Telegram reporter for years and years and years and wrote a column called Up and Down the Street.
I remember Up and Down the Street, yep.
And he was a great fan of the Superior Public Library also. So they must have had something in common. But after that, she went and she had gotten a part-time job at a Duluth photography shop, and she saved her money and she went to school in Minneapolis at the Minneapolis Art Institute and studied photography. So she did that. And then her sisters had moved out to Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. So she went out there, couldn't get a job. It was about 1940, right before the war. She went to New York and she got a job with Vogue magazine. You know, Esther wasn't really, I would never think of her as a fashion photographer, but they had her first assignment was to photograph gifts that could be given for Christmas that year.
Okay.
And apparently Esther put her lights too close to this vase and it broke from the heat of the lights. She didn't last very long at Vogue after that, but she also took, I thought this was interesting, she also took pictures of people in nightclubs in New York City.
For Vogue or just on
Just
her own?
on her own. She was freelancing that. And after that, she went back to DC. And this was when the war had started. And it was easier for her to get a job. And she got a job at the National Archives, microfilming documents and books.
Okay.
And through her connections there, she met Roy Stryker, who was a very important photographer and one that Esther had read about and seen his photos in Life magazine. And he was working for one of those, they called them the alphabet, sections that Roosevelt had set up, like the CCC camps and the, WPA. He was working for the OWI, which was the Office of War Information. And what they were doing was photographing people across the United States, how they were coping with the war. So he gave Esther a job. At first it was just like developing photographs, but then he realized that she was a very talented photographer. So he started giving her assignments, but she didn't know how to drive a car.
Oh, no.
So she was limited to around Washington, D.C., but she took some fabulous pictures and really started to get noticed. And he finally gave her a job where she was living on a train for like 4 weeks, taking pictures of people traveling across the United States during the war. And that was important because gas was rationed. So a lot of people traveled by train and didn't use cars. Fabulous pictures. And then Roy Stryker left the Office of War Information towards the end of the war. And he convinced Esther to come and work with him for Standard Oil.
So commercial photography.
Commercial photography. And Standard Oil had a bit of bad press because they had apparently been in business with Hitler.
Oh, no.
In the petroleum industry before the war. And so they were trying to, repaint their image as portraying what the petroleum industry did for people across the world. So Stryker and his band of photographers went across the world photographing sites that Standard Oil was involved in. And so Esther got to travel everywhere. And apparently they were paid the astronomical sum at that time of $150 a week. Plus they had an expense account.
Wow.
And she got to travel all over the world. And she worked there for quite a while. But she started freelancing too. And she got involved with Life magazine.
Some of her best known work is Life.
Life magazine, yeah. The covers, the magazine that had given her inspiration, she ended up working for. She worked for Good Housekeeping, and she did these stories about people and their lives here in America and took fabulous pictures. And in fact, she came back once to Superior to take photos for Cream of Wheat cereal.
Cream of Wheat cereal?
Yeah. And they thought, well, Superior would probably be a good place to shoot pictures to use in advertisements for their hot cereal. Because it was a cold place. And she took pictures of kids out in Billings Park, dressed for outdoor activities. They're just fabulous, fabulous pictures. And they just used them in advertising for the cereal, like in Good Housekeeping magazine and other women's magazines. So Esther's pictures appeared with pictures of the boxes of cereal.
Wow.
But she did freelance for a long time, and she won a lot of awards. She was really well thought of in photography circles, and people wanted her to take pictures. And the Telegram was still, through the years, always writing stories about her. But her parents still lived in town. Her dad,
so she was a local girl, and her folks were
and she came back. I think she had an exhibit one time at the Douglas County Historical Society. Awesome. So she came back, but I think she had wanderlust, and traveled all over.
After traveling all those places, who wouldn't?
And then, of course, tastes change.
Right.
And she specialized in black and white photography. And that's what she loved most of all. I've seen a couple of her color photographs. They're beautiful. They look like paintings, her color photos, but she didn't like taking color pictures. She really loved black and white. So once she got out of the freelancing and all of that, she worked on books, and she published 2 books. One was called How Puppies Grow, and the other one was How Kittens Grow. And she took pictures of the animals, and they both won awards.
Really? So
And
she had quite a love for animals.
yeah, she always, there's great pictures of her Great Dane.
Great Dane.
Yeah, she had a big dog. And she lived in New York City till the end in a rent-controlled apartment, her niece told me, which I think she paid like $148 a month for. And she died in 91.
Wow, that's
I think it was 91.
Good deal on rent.
Yeah. So, but she was always, it just surprises me that someone knew as young as she knew. Mm-hmm. She knew what she was going to do.
And she wasn't going to let others stop her.
Nobody was going to stop her. And it was like she had blinders on, and she had a laser focus on, she was going to be a photographer. Mm-hmm. And of course, she didn't get as much recognition, I think, in the later years as someone like, like the bigger photographers that we remember from the 1930s. But in the last few years, there have been more exhibitions of her photographs and things.
So she is still remembered. Her work is still
remembered.
Can be found. And
there's a great book. It's called On Assignment. Mm-hmm. And it has a lot of photographs that Esther took in the book. And it's her history here in Superior and her family's history here in Superior. And they're just absolutely beautiful photographs. She took a picture of Albert Einstein.
Did she?
Yes.
Wow.
It's a wonderful photograph. It's in the book.
Okay.
So she had lots of opportunities to meet lots of different people,
famous people.
And travel all over the world.
Wonderful.
It must be hard to go back,
It must be. Speaking of famous people, our second photographer, Ray Jones, was kind of surrounded by famous people, wasn't he?
He was, and he too got his start in Superior at Drysdale Perry Photography.
Was he originally from Superior?
He was born in Superior, and the story is, well, you read a lot of different stories. You never know which one is exactly true. But I read that he started working at Drysdale Perry at the age of 9 because his father was a gambler in games and also a gambler in life. There were 4 kids in the family and his mom, and Dad didn't have a steady income, so he had to help out. So he started at age 9 sweeping like out the studio and doing odd jobs around there. And when he was 17 years old, his father died, and he was a sophomore, I think. Around then, 16 or 17, he was a sophomore at Central. He had to drop out of school because his mother needed the paycheck. Mm-hmm. But Drysdale Perry hired him back. And that's when he started to learn the photography business. And he had been interested in it, or they didn't hire him back. They hired him to do more at Drysdale Perry. And that's where he learned to be a photographer, was there. I think one story said that he learned, how to shoot portraits of people because he shot portraits of babies at Drysdale Perry, but that wasn't true. He specialized in outdoor photography for them.
Really?
Yeah. They were a big operation. They were commercial photographers. They took pictures of businesses, not just people coming into the studio for portraits. So he got an opportunity to shoot a lot of different kinds of photos. Mm-hmm. When World War I broke out, he wanted to join the service, but his mother didn't want him to because she needed the money,
Right. He was supporting the family at that point, probably.
So he started working as a welder down at the shipyards at Superior Shipbuilding. And he worked, I think, in other areas of the country too, doing welding. But after the war, he came back, went back to Drysdale Perry again and really? Started working for them. But by about 1923, he said he was getting restless. That he probably learned and done all that he could here in Superior. So the whole family packed up the car and they drove out to California.
Oh.
And he ended up in Hollywood, and he ended up right away going to work for Universal Studios. But his first assignment was taking pictures of the banquets that they would have at Universal Studios, not any movie star portraits or anything. And then he left that and he moved around from studio to studio for a while, but he was learning the trade of taking those kinds of portraits that he would need to take in Hollywood. Eventually came back to Universal Studios, and they hired him as their main still photographer. He was in charge of, I think, 56 people who worked under him.
Wow.
And they had their own building on the lot for still photography.
Just to take, because this was back in the
30s. He started working there. Yeah. And the heyday was in the 40s. And they used them for publicity for their pictures.
Right.
So he would take these fabulous portraits of the stars. And he said sometimes it would take a whole day to just to take one person's picture. Sometimes it wouldn't be that long. Mm-hmm. Ray shot the pictures. He had people who moved the lights for him and adjusted things. Ray took the pictures. Okay. And he took it on a big camera. I think the negatives were 8 inches by 10 inches. So they were big at that time.
Like a sheet of paper size. Wow.
And he took some fabulous photos. The studio he worked for, Universal, didn't have the biggest stars. MGM had the biggest stars, but sometimes they would they would be lent out. The actors would be lent out to another. They'd be under contract to one studio, but they'd be lent out to another. So he took some pictures of people that we would still recognize today. There's a lot of people that he took photos of that we don't even know about today, but he took pictures of John Wayne, and he won one of his Academy Awards for the picture he took of John Wayne because it was so natural, and they had left the creases in John Wayne's face in the final photo. They didn't touch them up. Yeah. So he won an Academy Award for that picture of John Wayne. He took pictures of Marlene Dietrich, beautiful photos of Marlene Dietrich. But his big ticket item, and the big ticket item for Universal Studios, was an actor called Deanna Durbin.
I have never heard of Deanna Durbin.
She was the biggest star, and she herself saved Universal Studio from going under. Because she was so popular.
Wow.
She was a teenage star, sort of like the Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland kind of era.
Do you know any of the film names?
I looked at the film names and I don't remember any of them, but they were huge hits in the 1930s, you know. But you have a short shelf life, unless you're Judy Garland.
Right.
And you're in that era, you're a teenage star, you have a short shelf life. So it was only a few years, but they had other people. They had Mae West, and there's a picture in a book that's called Light and Illusion. It's about Ray Jones's career. This fabulous photo, which people probably don't even remember these people anymore, but it was W.C. Fields. People remember W.C. Fields. And it was Edgar Bergen. And now people probably don't remember Edgar Bergen. His daughter, Candace Bergen, was Murphy Brown on TV. But Edgar was a ventriloquist who did his act mostly on radio. So I don't know how good of a ventriloquist you have to be. But Charlie McCarthy was one of his ventriloquism dummies. And Ray took this great picture of W.C. Fields. Charlie McCarthy is looking over his shoulder, and Edgar's looking over Charlie's shoulder, and they all have pipes. And it's a fabulous photo. So, you know, once in a while he'd get some of the bigger name stars. Marlene Dietrich was, of course, a huge star. So.
And you said there was a lot going. So did they try a lot of different costumes during all these shoots and a lot of different poses?
No, I think it was usually one costume.
It just took a long time.
It would take, you know, people. I'm sure some people were more difficult than others. And then I have a feeling Ray was a perfectionist too.
Okay.
And then he would get done, and then they would send the photo off to be retouched and all of that too. They're very glamorous during the period he was taking them. I mean, he just makes these people look almost otherworldly, really and truly. They're just, he had an eye, you know, you have an eye or you don't have an eye.
It's almost exactly opposite of Esther, who is trying to show you people in everyday life, whereas he's trying to give you the glamour.
Yeah, but they both had that eye, and they both were best at taking pictures of people.
Right.
Some people are better at taking pictures of places, Ansel Adams, for instance.
Right.
But some people, they are destined to take pictures of other people. And these two were. And he did a fabulous job. A great picture of Ronald Reagan in the book.
He took a picture of
Ronald Reagan. And then, you know, once they moved out of the 40s, things started to change. They wanted people to look more ordinary. Universal was making like, I don't know what, these probably B movies with like normal people. And so it wasn't as glamorous as it had been before.
Right.
And then they were moving into color photography too.
And how many times did he win the Academy Award?
Apparently he won 5. And this was something that was put on by the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences. They would have a display once a year. I think they did it for maybe 5 years. And because they thought that the still photographers were not getting the recognition that they were due, because their pictures advertised these movies. And so they had these exhibitions, and people were allowed to vote on their favorite photos too, but they were also judged. And Ray won 5 times he won. And, you know, a couple of times he won. Well, they were all considered, I guess, Academy Awards because they were presented by they didn't look, some of them looked, they were statues, but they had medals too that had like a statue on them. but he won 5.
Wow.
And he was chosen once. He was the favorite of everybody who attended, the showing of the photographs. He was the favorite. It was a Deanna Durbin.
They're cool. They're a meal ticket.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now, these days, there is no such thing as an Academy Award for still photography.
I don't think so. Yeah.
I don't think.
I don't
that's
think
a good
so
question.
either. Yeah.
Have to look it up.
Oh no, another question to look up.
Just add it to your list.
Yeah. So, he left Universal, I think, in about 1958, and he did some freelance for other studios after that. And of course, he had a studio in his house that he would take pictures of people.
And did he stay in California?
He did stay in California. He died in 1975.
Okay.
Interesting thing about Ray. Interesting thing. Ray was born the same year as Gordon McQuarrie and J.W. Beecroft. They were all in the same class, but Ray couldn't graduate because he had to quit school. They were all in the same class at Central High School.
Wow.
I know. What is in the water, Maria?
I don't know. A lot of famous names there.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, now we'll come to a photographer that folks in Superior probably have heard the name before, David Francis Barry. Now, he was a photographer out in the Dakotas?
He was, but he lived in Wisconsin.
So he was born in Wisconsin?
Don't know. His family lived in the state of New York, and they moved out here. No, he was born there because he was born in, I believe, 1854.
Okay.
And they moved to Wisconsin about 1860, 1861, Columbus, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And that's where he got his start in photography, because there was a photographer in the town that David worked for, Orlando Goff. And so David worked for him, doing whatever you do around studios, just like Ray, I suppose, like Ray Jones, you get your start there.
Right.
And Goff left and he went out to the Dakotas. But David Barry stayed in Wisconsin. Eventually, Orlando Goff contacted Barry and asked him if he would come out and manage his photography business in Bismarck, because Goff wanted to go out and take pictures, of the Old West or, of the Dakota Territory. And he wanted to keep his studio.
Right.
But he also wanted to be out taking pictures of Native Americans and everything else that was out there. So that's where Barry got his start in the Dakotas, was going out there and managing the business for him. Because you will see, this is what puzzled me at first, you will see pictures of George Armstrong Custer, the Battle of Little Bighorn. And you will see pictures, and it will say on there, it will have Barry's signature on there. But he never met Custer. Barry never met Custer. Custer died in 76, and Barry didn't go out there until 1878.
So how did his name get on there?
Apparently Goff had taken pictures of Custer, and he sold the rights or the negatives to Barry, so then he was able to process the photographs and then put his name on them. So that always confused me at first, because when you read about David Barry and you read the stories especially in the Evening Telegram about him, he always gave an interview every year, of Custer's last stand. And you're not knowing for sure if he actually knew Custer or was this secondhand knowledge. And I don't know if he ever, ever admitted that. But when you do the math, you figure out, well, he wasn't.
So he was telling a story.
He was really, but the thing about Barry, though, is he talked to everyone who was still around when he went out to the Dakotas, the Native Americans and the Army, the soldiers who had been in the battle. He talked to all of them. So he had firsthand knowledge in that way. Well, it was secondhand knowledge for him, but they were the people who were at the battle. So
he got them from the source.
Yes. And so when he worked for Goff for a while, he got interested in going out and taking pictures too. And that's how he got to start taking pictures of the Native Americans.
Did he stay with Goff's studio, or did he start his own?
He had like a portable photography studio that he would put on a steamboat and go down a river and get off, and he'd go to places and take pictures. That's what he did. And then in 1890, he came to Superior because it was an up and coming town.
Okay.
And he thought, he would do well here. And he stayed in Superior until 1897. And then he went to New York City to try out and see if he could sell his pictures that he had taken, because his Native American pictures were very popular. Very, very popular.
Was he friends with them? Did he form connections Or was
He
it just
did.
hey, anyone want to come and take a picture?
He did form connections with them, and they looked at him as a friend because they gave him his Native American name, which translates into the little shadow catcher, because they truly believe that when he did this, he was capturing the spirit of a person and putting it on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the little shadow catcher. And they honored him in that way. And at first, some of them were hesitant about having their photos taken, but then they did. And I think he was a true friend. I think he had this interest in the battle, Custer's last stand. And at that time, George Armstrong Custer was a hero. But, things are open to interpretation, and there's another side to the story, too.
Mm-hmm.
But he was always a friend to the natives, and they came to Superior and had their pictures taken here in his studio.
Really?
He took many pictures, and if you know the Tiffany window in Duluth, the Minnehaha window that's in the depot right now, you go there and look at that window and then go back and look at the picture of Shooting Star that David Barry took.
Gonna find some similarities?
It is. You can never find an absolute from either the artist or Barry that it was used.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have to look at it. And he took that picture of her. He had a tremendous collection of Native American artifacts, moccasins that were given to him by the Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
He also, it has to be admitted that he went out to the battlefield and he picked up souvenirs from the battlefield too.
Oh.
And those were part of his collection. But
Did they get returned?
Well, there's a story to this too. He had an immense collection. You can find pictures of his studio, the interior of his studio, and you just look at what he had on the walls. He had garments. He had, as I said, moccasins. He had everything you could imagine. And he was offered at that time $5,000 for the collection, which was a lot of money back, in the early 20th century, but he wouldn't sell it. Everything meant so much to him. Mm-hmm. And when he died, he had no money. And in the last few years of his life, it's like the people in Superior adopted him and they sort of made work for David Barry. They had him take pictures of Tower Avenue. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've seen pictures of the Princess Theater with the Barry studio next to it. It's an old picture from the 20s. Barry had a studio in the building next to the old Princess Theater on the second floor. And he took that photo himself. Oh. He took pictures of the East End Library, but he did not like taking pictures of buildings.
He was another person photographer.
He was a person photographer, but he needed the money to pay the rent. But the people adopted him. And when he died, once again, our friend Gordon McQuarrie wrote a touching editorial about David in the paper after he died. And Gordon was also a pallbearer at his funeral, honorary pallbearer at his funeral. But when he died, he didn't have any money. And the only heir that he had was his brother, who didn't live nearby. And his brother and the locals got together and decided what they were going to do with all the things that David Barry had in his studio. And he had a huge number of negatives. And the Denver Public Library ended up with them. It's too bad because they should have stayed in Superior, but I'm sure they made a lot of money off of those negatives through the years because they were pictures of people like Sitting Bull, Rain in the Face. I mean, he took everybody's picture. He took Buffalo Bill's picture. They were great friends. He and Barry were great friends. And Buffalo Bill brought his Wild West show to Superior a couple times. But they bought them, so that was money that was used to settle Dave's estate and also to purchase the tremendous headstone that's out at Greenwood Cemetery marking his grave, which has a little shadow catcher on it, has his signature on it. His tombstone has his signature on it. But then there were also the items in his collection. And the people in Superior got together and a price had been decided on, $450, which was a pittance. But that's what his brother, who was his, the heir to his estate, said he would settle for that. And so they purchased it. And it went to the Douglas County Museum, Douglas County Historical Society's museum, and resided in their possession for many, many years until 1978 when it was stolen. The entire collection was stolen. It was on display on the third floor at Fairlawn. I believe it was the third floor. Thieves broke in and took everything.
Oh, wow.
Everything. Never found any of it until 1991 when there were a couple ceremonial shields that someone had tried to pawn. And the FBI was still looking for these people, and they found them, and they were returned to the Historical Society, but they were eventually returned to the tribe.
Okay.
They didn't hold on to them, but I was on the Historical Society's board in, the early 2000s, and one of our board members contacted Wes Cowan, who was an appraiser on the Antiques Roadshow, and he came to Superior to look at what the Historical Society still had in their collection, which was all these photographs. They may have sold the negatives to the Denver Public Library, but Superior still had his pictures.
Oh, I see.
So he came and he was just, floored that we were in possession of this. And we were talking about the items that had been stolen. And he told me, he said, why don't you contact the FBI? He said, I bet they're still looking for them. And if you go back and you go through the newspapers from that time when they were stolen, there's barely a word.
Oh, they kept it hush-hush.
They kept it very hush-hush. And apparently the FBI came in right away.
Okay.
And was trying to look for these items. And Wes said to me, he said, they haven't appeared yet. He said, but maybe when that generation who owns them dies off and the next generation doesn't know what they are really, they might start appearing on the market again, but I don't think they've ever had any.
Interesting. I wonder if the FBI is still looking.
I believe they are.
Oh.
But I'm sure certainly everything would be returned to the tribes,
Right.
You would
definitely.
That's who they belong to and that's who they should go to. But quite a shock. I mean, that was a centerpiece of the Historical Society's collection.
Right.
And it meant so much to people too. There were still people around, I imagine, who maybe their parents knew David Barry or something, but knew about David Barry. So it was a tremendous loss.
Well, interesting. So many photographers out of such a small town. And not all of them were born here, but they've all got some great connections.
But 2 of them went to Central High School.
Oh, that Central connection again. You're going to have to do one on East High School pretty soon, he's the other side of Superior.
I know. Yes, they're feeling neglected.
They are.
There's something about Central.
There is. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Teddy.
You're welcome.
And thank you for listening to Archive Dive. New episodes are available monthly at superiortelegram.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have a topic you'd like us to explore, email me at mlockwood@superiortelegram.com.